for HyperloopTT, we're building this brand as you would any other iconic brand. So, any of these iconic brands you can think of, we need to have a presence like they would. We need to the visual needs to be creative and stunning and interesting. All of the details we need to really perform on the highest level to be able to bring this to life.
I'm Eric Fulwiler, and this is Scratch, bringing you marketing lessons from the leading brands and brains rewriting the rulebook from scratch for the world of today. Wow, such a fascinating conversation with Rob, CMO of Hyperloop Transportation Technology. So, talk a bit about Rob's background, and then of course we get into the world of Hyperloop. So many of you have probably heard of Hyperloop like I had from when Elon came out. It was almost 10 years ago now, talking about building, this new transportation technology between LA and San Francisco. But actually, as Rob describes, the history of Hyperloop, the technology or the idea for the technology is over 150 years old, and there were patents on it over 100 years ago. So it's been around for a while. Obviously, Elon helped to popularize it, but it was so fascinating hearing about the technology, hearing about how Hyperloop Transportation Technology, HTT, how they structure their business. So they actually have a relatively small full-time team. I think it was 50 or 60 people, but 800 contributors that work part-time in exchange for equity. That was fascinating. It's fascinating hearing about how you build a brand for a product that doesn't exist. And actually, it's a brand for the category in a way. And a lot of it is about credibility because there's regulation and safety as much as there is what are the reasons to buy the product when it actually comes out. So I don't want to give too much more away. I know that you, like me, are going to be fascinated by this conversation. So I'll just leave it there. Without further ado, please enjoy, as I know I did, my conversation with Rob Miller. Kicking things off, would love to hear about a brand that you're obsessed with right now.
A brand that I'm obsessed with. What a good question. I think for us in the world of Hyperloop, we're every day we're looking at how can we as a society decarbonize transportation. So for me, everything else in our world that's going to help us to build this zero emissions future, from electric vehicles to drone delivery to vertical eVTOL tech. So there are a few really interesting players in that space, and that's kind of where we're geeking out. Of course, here on Earth and in space, the James Webb Telescope is another. So NASA is still a brand that we're geeking out with these days.
Oh, I love it. And like I mentioned before we started recording, I'm hoping that a friend of mine who works at NASA on the marketing and communication side is going to be here. But yeah, NASA brand having its moment, coming back. Great. So Rob, why don't we start with a little bit of your story, and then we can get into the meat of it, talking about Hyperloop Transportation Technology. But why don't you give a bit of an overview on your background? Because I think it's really interesting, not just the role that you have now and having been in this world and at this business for 6 years now, but also you've got, some businesses that you founded. You were at Cotton USA, and I know you lived overseas and worked overseas with them for a long time. So tell us a little bit about the story of Rob and how you became a CMO.
Yeah, it's been an interesting and fun journey to get here. Not necessarily a traditional one. I was I was a neuroscience guy who was headed to medical school. My last semester of university undergraduate, I did a semester on a ship called Semester at Sea, where we traveled around the world. And I, at that moment, decided that to bag much to my parents' dismay, to abandon the medical school dreams and pursue a dream of seeing this big world. So I immediately I graduated, then found a master's program in Japan, studying international relations. I thought that would be the best way to find a kind of multinational job. Had this really unique opportunity with Cotton USA. We're helping to promote cotton around the world. That put me on lived in Asia for 10 years, put me on an airplane at least once a week for more than a decade. So my 20s and 30s were really spent mostly getting from one place to another. And one of the opportunities I have living in Shanghai, living in Tokyo, was commuting by the bullet train in Japan and taking the maglev train in Shanghai. So I'd seen this advertisement for the bullet train at the time, and this is probably 10 years ago, so now it's 10 years older. But the bullet train is now 60 years old. They launched the bullet train in Japan almost 60 years ago, which is for me was absolutely fascinating because growing up in the States and in a car culture, to be able to travel by high speed rail was very cool. And I thought, well, why haven't we evolved this? Why haven't we built this elsewhere? And then why in 60 years have we not built anything better, faster, greener? And then I'd come back to the States and was really interested in tech and entrepreneurship and transportation. So I pivoted my career there. Had read about Hyperloop and thought, man, this is maybe the coolest job on the planet, the coolest project on the planet. And was fortunate enough to meet the founders at South by Southwest 7 years ago, and have been fortunate enough to be with the company since.
That's amazing. And if my research is accurate, you speak fluent Japanese as well, right?
Yeah, these days it's just for ordering sushi, but I really don't get much of a chance to practice.
But it's funny that you say that about the train in Japan, that technology being 60 years old. I had a thought similarly because I saw somewhere there was a picture of the Concorde from like 1988 or whatever it was. I was like, we had something. It was like the fastest flight from New York to London was like under 3 hours. And here we are now, it doesn't run anymore, but we haven't moved things forward in any significant way when it comes to air travel. And obviously what you're doing with Hyperloop technology is trying to do that for train travel, which I will comment, having just booked my Amtrak from Boston to New York next week, needs a bit of a leveling up, especially in the US.
It's interesting, Eric. You mentioned the Concorde. I think there's, I remember as a kid, I had this wealthy uncle, his Tio Rico, who had the plaque on his wall because when you fly in the Concorde, you get a little certificate, and I was, oh my gosh, you flew the Concorde. What was it like? It's like, well, it was loud, it was cramped, it was uncomfortable, but it was fast. So there are a lot of lessons to be learned from the Concorde. I think for us, we look at that as, all right, speed is something, but it's not everything, obviously. So building a transportation system that speed does captivate some people, but yeah, it's not going to get that alone is not going to get a Hyperloop to your city.
Yep. So it's funny. I will bring this up. I had an old, a guy that I worked with on the agency side. He was the COO of VaynerMedia for a while. Now he's the CEO of Sasha Group, James Orsini. I'm going to have to send this episode to him just for the shout out. He had the coasters from the Concorde in his office, and he would always talking about going back and forth between New York and London in the old agency days on the Concorde. So good story. So with that, let's dig into it. So I am fascinated to learn, get your perspective, get up to speed with everything that's going on in your world of Hyperloop transportation technology, the actual business, and also Hyperloop as a technology overall. So why don't we start there? Hyperloop. So 150-year-old technology. It's not a new thing, but obviously became more mainstream with Elon Musk and his kind of announcement about the business that he set up, focusing on the technology. I think it was about 10 years ago. So why don't we start with Hyperloop, the technology, and then let's talk about Hyperloop transportation technologies, your business. So Hyperloop, the technology, can you give people the overview and a bit of the history to the extent that you know it, and bring us up to where we are today?
Sure. So, Hyperloop as a technology essentially is, if you think about the fuselage of an airplane, so a plane without the wings and the tail, that essentially is a Hyperloop capsule. And what we're trying to do with Hyperloop is eliminate friction. So, You're driving down the road, you roll your window down, you're going 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers per hour, you put your hand out. That's the resistance, that's the friction that we face in transportation today. And that's why we're limited to be able to hit certain speeds, because we can only, if you want to increase speed, you need to, the cost for is so high, that the energy cost is so high that it makes it not feasible. So we use vacuum technology to create a low pressure environment inside the tube, about between 10 to 100 pascals, which is roughly where the Red Bull Stratus jump took place in the atmosphere. That's about the same atmosphere. And what that allows us to do is move very efficiently, sustainably, because we're using renewable energies, and safely. So that's Hyperloop in a nutshell. The thing that a lot of people don't realize is that Hyperloop as a concept, you mentioned it, is more than 150 years old. So in London and New York in the 1860s, we were building pneumatic tube subway systems. The first patent for Hyperloop was Robert Goddard. I think it was 1919, somewhere around there. So 100 years old. It's really all based on existing technology. Now we're using kind of a next generation maglev system, and improvements on certain technologies, but it's really about, Hyperloop hasn't been built because it all hasn't been put together. So there's really nothing that's really revolutionary about it. But the revolutionary thing is that we're in a world where the last major advance in transportation is 60, 70 years ago. And if we were sitting in 1920 instead of 1922, instead of 2022, and we're talking about the next generation of transportation, we'd be excited about it, because we've seen in our lifetime going from horse and buggy to electric car to train and now airplane, and we've seen all that innovation in 20, 30, 40 years. Fast forward 100 years, and we're skeptical about it because, in my lifetime, I've everything from bullet train to tuk-tuk, transportation has not gotten better, right? Now we're in a kind of a crowded summer season post-pandemic, where flights are full, lines are long. It's just really a miserable experience getting from point A to point B. And we're doing so in a way that's really harmful to the planet. Transportation is almost a quarter of all carbon emissions worldwide. So we're polluting our planet. We're taking months and sometimes years off of our lives, depending on where you live. So we have an opportunity now to really reinvent transportation and to take the next step forward. And that's essentially Hyperloop in a nutshell.
Okay. And so then where are we on that journey? So the concept of the technology, the patents for the technology, 100 plus years old. Obviously, it got a lot more attention with Elon. But where are we on that journey of actually realizing this technology, maybe overall? Because I know there's a few businesses and a lot of different people kind of looking at this space, and then specifically for HyperloopTT.
Yeah, one of the things about being with HyperloopTT for now 6-7 years is we've seen Hyperloop as go from a concept to now a reality, and we're at the point where it's no longer if Hyperloop, it's just a matter of when can you and I ride, and where will that first Hyperloop be. So we've built our first full scale prototype in Toulouse, France. And now we're in a place where Italy is building the first 10 kilometers of Hyperloop system. That should be ready mid decade, and then the first commercial Hyperloop hopefully will be transporting millions of passengers before the end of this decade. And it's a little bit of an ambitious goal, but we feel fairly confident that it's happening pretty quickly.
And where will the footprint be? So it sounds like, at least for that initial build, that's in Europe. Is that where you're focused? Because I know when Elon kind of came out with his thing, it was more San Francisco to LA. But your footprint, and then also the footprint of the industry, the different businesses looking at Hyperloop, where are they focused on building this out right now?
Yeah, so I think if you look at rail travel, there's I mean there are rail lines all over the world. So I think the same with Hyperloop. We're looking at the one thing we can't be as a company is we can't be an American company, or we really can't be a European company, because the opportunities. Our first feasibility study was in the Emirates. The second was Chicago to Cleveland to Pittsburgh. One in India. We have agreements with a few different countries around the world, so it's really. I think there's a lot of interest. It's kind of a race to see where the first commercial route will be. It looks like the first 10 kilometers will be in Italy.
It's fascinating. I can't wait to dig into how you actually build a brand and market something like this that has so many different pieces, so many moving parts, so many pieces on the chessboard, as it were. But before we do that, I want to talk about the business of Hyperloop TT because it's very unique. So I know that you're a full-time employee, and there are obviously full-time employees, but actually Hyperloop TT is a business. So you have over 800 people who you call contributors, who work a minimum of 10 hours a week in exchange for future stock options. So just want to make sure I got that right. And follow-up question, how do you make that work? How's it going?
I mean, Eric, if you think about it, if you and I were to we were to go out and start a Hyperloop company tomorrow, so we're starting our own Hyperloop company. The resources we would need to do so. I mean, if you think about the engineering disciplines alone, aerospace, aeronautics, nuclear physics, vacuum technology, and 2 dozen more. If we're in Los Angeles or we're in London, the best people may not be here. The best people are probably working at places like JPL or Tesla or SpaceX or Boeing or Airbus or any of the other companies that you could think of. And it's a $1 billion proposition to do it in a traditional way. So for us, we did a call to action early on, and asked a community that our founder had formed, that if Hyperloop was something that they wanted to take up, a project that they wanted to take up. We talked to SpaceX. They said blast it off. And essentially we did a call to action for engineers to figure out back in 2013 if this Hyperloop concept was something that's actually feasible. And the response that we got, what we said was, we'll instead of compensation, we'll give you equity in the company via stock options, work on this feasibility study for us, and help us to determine if this is something that we should pursue. We had this amazing roster and incredible interest around Hyperloop. Engineers from a lot of the companies that I'd mentioned, and people that have done really great things like build the CERN Large Hadron Collider. There was even someone, he's passed away since, but he'd worked on the Manhattan Project. So it was just an incredible group of people that came together with this passion around this idea. They took 5 months to study it. We came back with our initial feasibility study that said that it's a little bit different than was imagined originally, but it's all existing technology. It's absolutely feasible. So what we did was our founders started a company that was really just based on bringing people in for equity in the company, and everyone was a contributor in the beginning. We focused on partnerships, so we tried to build best-in-class partners, and now we've kind of grown to a little bit of a hybrid model, because I think full-time employment is not for everyone. If you're, I remember early on, back in 2016, I was sitting in a room with our propulsion and levitation team, and they were talking about the levitation gap is a really critical concept in maglev technology. If it's 5 millimeters too much, then you lose so much efficiency and the whole concept isn't viable. So he was talking about his time at Lawrence Livermore Lab, and he essentially went up to the wall. He said, we had this problem back in the early 90s. It took our team the month to figure out, and just wrote the equation on the board and said, here's the answer. So for us, it's been those those insights that we couldn't have gathered as a traditional startup, and the insights of working with those in sometimes traditional transportation industries who are, since we're standing on the shoulders of giants, they've built great things. They're helping us to bring Hyperloop to the world. So I think it's a model of partnership. It's a model of we can't do it alone, and accepting that big society's big challenges require sometimes radical ways of collaboration. We were mostly. I mean, we have an office in LA, and we have an office in Dubai, small one in the center in Toulouse, small one in Spain. But we're mostly working remotely pre-pandemic. So once we got back in 2020, we just kind of kept going as we were. So it was a little bit of a radical idea in 2019, but now now it's kind of the world is doing the same thing.
So you have over 800 contributors. How many full-time employees are there?
We have between 50 and 60
Okay.
full-time employees, and for us, it's always we want to keep a small core group, and we'll be growing that in the future, but never I think not in the case where we'll have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people. It'll always be a combination.
And do you leverage a contributor network on the marketing side as well, or is that a full-time / agency team, more of a traditional setup?
I do, and that's been, I mean, from a management perspective, it's been a learning curve. It's interesting. I'll get in the beginning I had this he was a fairly successful lawyer who loved writing and loved science fiction writing and loved writing about Hyperloop. So he would call me every week and say, "How can I, how can I help? What can I write about?" And he would take some time on the weekend and put some things together. Some of it was a little bit out there, but often it was helpful and non-traditional. So we have that kind of passion with our group. We've been fortunate enough that Harvard Business School has published two case studies on us. I get the opportunity once a semester to kind of teach the case at Harvard, USC, and a few other universities. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, and it's one I think that is two things. I mean, one is it's fueled mostly by passion. So there's much less of a carrot and a stick of traditional arrangements. My entire marketing and most of the design team we've built by we bring on a contributor who's seems like they can provide value, and they're absolutely amazing once you start working together. So I'd say, hey, Julia, you absolutely have to be a part of the team full time, because and this is not something that I could predict. I'm not good enough to predict it by a resume. But by working together a little bit, you realize, and so that's how we've built our core team is that we found the people that kind of work best in our culture, and we realized that we can't let them go, in a sense.
So how long do contributors need to commit for in order to have the chance to get involved? I'm asking for a friend here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, Eric, we started off with the idea of, okay, 10 hours a week minimum, but we've relaxed that. And, it's really situation dependent. So we have some specialized engineers who we really don't need weekly, and they sometimes they don't have time weekly. But, as we confront problems, we can pull in teams together to help to solve them. So there's a lot of flexibility around our contributor model now.
Fascinating. Okay. So drilling into your marketing team. So what does that look like in terms of full-time people, contributors that you tap into, external support like agencies, or, more pay-as-you-go freelancers? What does the actual marketing function look like within HTT?
So we have there are 4 full-time people in our marketing department right now. We have probably 10 to 20 different contributors who are on and off depending on our needs. A few different PR agencies. We have a creative director who's in New York who's who's a contributor. So it's a very small core team that for us it's important that we have people that are flexible enough to do kind of the entire spectrum of marketing and design. That because it's not necessarily a traditional role. I mean, the needs of today may not represent the needs of tomorrow. So we need to have a lot of flexibility, and we need a lot of resiliency because we may be doing something fairly quickly on a tight turnaround that needs to be translated to Chinese, and so we've been able to work with our core team, and then we'll have people. We can pass things off to people that are on different time zones and wake up in the morning and see. So really, it's the contributor model allows us to never stop if we do it right.
So talking about how you build the brand and drive growth of the HTT business as the CMO, I guess the place to start is, can you give us an overview of how you think about or how you've built the marketing strategy? Because obviously there's a product at the end of the day, but it's not here now. It's not something that people can buy. I would imagine there's a piece of it that is employer branding, as it were, the contributor network. That's a huge part of how you're going to do what you want to do. So there's that element of it as well. There's kind of how do you take something that is more futuristic and make it simple, kind of like you were explaining it at the beginning. Like that to me made it so much more digestible in terms of, okay, I can see what this actually looks like and how it could appeal to someone like me. And then of course you've got the X factor of Elon Musk playing in and around this space. So many different variables, so many things going on. Break it down for us, like open the hood on the marketing strategy for HTT.
Yeah, we're in a sense we're the company without a billionaire. All right, so we're the first Hyperloop, our first Hyperloop company. There's no Elon Musk in our company. There's no Richard Branson. So there are advantages and disadvantages there. So I think for us, it's really about it gives us the opportunity to we're not seen as that person. We're seen as the brand. So it's we were a small team in the beginning with contributors who were expressing the brand in a lot of different ways. So for us, it was really important to get down and figure out who we are, what we stand for, and our visual identity, and be very, very strict about enforcing that around the world. A couple of things. One is it's important. One is that we had a lot of people in the beginning were talking about the speed of sound. So this is travel at the speed of sound. So Eric, if I were to say, okay, get in my capsule and tube, and we're gonna go the speed of sound, you might be all for it. And there are about 10 to 15% of people that are like, strap me in, put me on the rocket, and I want to take a ride. But a lot of people are uncomfortable with that, traveling the speed of sound. But the reality is that we know that feeling because we're going 500, 600, and sometimes more miles per hour in a plane. So and essentially the first Hyperloops will be really airplane speed on the ground. So early on, we've tried to change the way we talk about it, the way we think about it, from this superlative, super fast transportation system to it's a system that's going airplane speed on the ground, but it's doing so efficiently, safely, and sustainably. And those kind of pivots, and the pivot from something that was seen as far away future, because when you talk about Hyperloop to people, again, it's because we haven't seen transportation and new transportation in our lifetime. It's easy to imagine it in these Hollywood settings where we were in the 2050s, 2060s, 2070s. Everything's vertical, and eventually, like things go to shit in the movie. So things blow up, and so we've tried to bring it down into the world of today instead of the world of faraway future. So everything with all of our work with the brand has really been driving that point that and it's for us as well. It's we're having a lot of conversations with obviously governments around the world who are trusting us to build transportation system that are safe for their people. With investors who are looking at the Hyperloop, and a lot of the stories of progress are not that sexy. In reality, regulations are more challenging in a sense than the technology itself. So for us, it's been 5 years of work in building regulations and building safety protocols and doing all the small things and bringing on partners in that space to make sure that we have the tech, but to be able to build it. So it all revolves around credibility of the company. I mean, for us, it's we know that there's zero tolerance for anything to go wrong in a Hyperloop system. So our marketing effort reflects that as well. So I think, I mean, things as small as spelling mistakes or we're very attuned to that because we know that what you're expecting from us as a company is flawlessness in travel, and that's not a lofty goal. The bullet train in Japan has not had a single fatality in those almost 60 years. That's actually very possible. So credibility is a really important element for us.
And is that the main marketing objective? Because obviously it's not selling tickets to passengers. It sounds like it's not, selling big contracts to governments. Is it really focused on credibility, or is there a different way that you think about the objective that the marketing function is looking to drive?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really about communicating the fact that this is a transportation system that is being built, that is going to deliver on these promises. And when we when we talk about the promises, they can seem pretty out there. For example, if we were building a Hyperloop from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, on top of the Hyperloop system, we're applying solar panels. So what it becomes is an LA to Vegas massive solar farm in the places where it's above ground. And the Hyperloop system in itself uses very little energy in operations. So the energy we collect in solar exceeds the energy we would use in operation. So it's more than this is not according to the marketing department, it's according to our engineers. So that we have the potential to build a system that's actually generating more energy than it's using, that can give back to the grid. It creates a lot of interesting design challenges when you're designing a pylon. How can we use that pylon? Can you plug into it? Can you plug your electric vehicle into it? Can we provide services to landowners along the way? So it's really, our job is to deliver that information in a way that's not fanciful, that's not magical, that's credible. And there's also the challenge of we have the technology is still fairly linked to Elon Musk, so there's a divide of how people feel about him, at least in the States, and how they feel about the technology. So a lot of people, if they like Elon Musk, who's done some great things, they're going to be a fan of Hyperloop, and the converse, they're going to believe that this is some kind of snake oil. So we have this challenge of there's a vocal minority it was much bigger in the beginning, saying this is something that's just going to blow up and it's never going to work. And so we heard that in the beginning, and we built it, and we still hear a little bit today. So our challenge is really building a new transportation system in a world of non-believers. The reality is, the second time, Eric, you ride Hyperloop, it's going to be like you live in the world of Hyperloop and it's completely normal. But the first time is really the hurdle that we need to get over. For us, there's always the challenge as well of company versus industry, because we still have even though Hyperloop we have this amazing voice with Hyperloop, and people are very interested in it. We can still be spending our time talking about Hyperloop as an industry, or HyperloopTT and the kind of what the promise that we're delivering. So there's always a balance between, for us, is this do we spend our time educating about Hyperloop, or do we spend our time educating about our brand?
And so what does that look like in output? So that philosophy, that strategy, the story that you're telling or want to be telling to the world, how do you actually do that where the rubber meets the road on comms?
Yeah, it's. I mean, a lot of our honestly, a lot of our work is and has been one on one. So in meeting rooms, we're in meetings. Our executives are in meetings every week with with someone, and a lot of the work is really telling the story to them in a way where it's credible, and then it kind of masks everything from traditional communication pieces via social media to some kind of short form videos that we've produced to announcing our achievements. And the challenge with that is that in the beginning there was we would do everything was amplified in a big way. We built the first passenger capsule, major announcement. We built the first system, major announcement. And now we're in this period where a lot of it is incremental improvements. We've brought on a partner to assess to assess and improve the safety of the system. We've moved forward with regulations with a document, and it's all building towards a story. It's a little bit like nuclear fusion in a way where there are a lot of advancements that are happening in nuclear fusion, but it's still not there, right? So we're getting closer and closer, and for us, it's really about the milestones along the way.
A random question that just popped to mind before I know we need to wrap this up. So I mentioned at the beginning before we started recording that our business is all about trying to build successful challenger brands. Do you think of Hyperloop Transportation Technology, like the brand that you're responsible for, or the broader Hyperloop brand in general, the brand of the technology? Do you view that as a challenger? And if so, how does that work into your thinking as CMO?
Yeah, I think both are both would qualify as challenger brands. Because we're building something completely new. For and it goes in that type of thinking goes into really the everyday. I mean, for HyperloopTT, we're building this brand as you would any other iconic brand. So any of these iconic brands you can think of, we need to have a presence like they would. We need to the visual needs to be creative and stunning and interesting. All of the details we need to really perform on the highest level to be able to bring this to life. So we're still in a sense a small organization who have internal expectations of being an iconic and legacy brand.
So before I let you go, Rob, last question that I always ask at the end of every interview. If people listening to this, what is one thing that they should be doing differently based on your experience and perspective?
It's a great question. So narrowing it down to one thing differently, I think building resiliency in your teams. So we're a company that's seen the extremes over the years. We have extremely high moments and extremely low moments, and we've been fortunate enough. I think that's hardened us in a sense that we're an extremely resilient team that we can wake up and whatever the day throws at us, I feel like we can overcome. So if I were to look back and give myself advice, 10 years ago, I would say resiliency and toughness.
Love that. All right, Rob, this has been fascinating. I've always been personally curious about this technology and about how, you and other people are building a business around it and just the future of transportation in general. So this was really, really fun for me, and I appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure, Eric. Thanks so much for having me on. It was a great conversation. Enjoyed it.
Cool. And hope to see you in a couple of weeks in LA.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Take care. Scratch is a production of Rival. We are a marketing innovation consultancy that helps businesses develop strategies and capabilities to grow faster. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with me, email me at eric@wearerival.com or find me on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and please do leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.